Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And on the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is useful human Arif Hassan. Arif, have you harassed any copy editors lately?
Well, it's funny you should say that. No, I mean, I just submitted a classic Arif piece, so I'm sure that they're going to be up all night.
6,000, 7,000 words.
Right. What is this madness?
Multiple graphics. Like, really? Did you really need to break down this too? Why the hell does Arif Hassan, is that Hassan? Arif Hassan, why does he have to be so damn thorough? And with that, welcome to this week's show. The Vikings did not win in Foxborough. It was a close game until the very end of the third quarter when the wheels kind of fell off the truck. But we'll be just talking about that in just a little bit, along with a long-winded discussion on the notorious JDF and his future with the Minnesota Vikings, along with a firing of Mike McCarthy, which we are both, I would say, in mourning. I think mourning is the correct correct.
No, it's. I mean, I think Zimmer's right. You know, they made the wrong decision. It's tough in this league. Mm-hmm.
If you spend 4 weeks telling people that you need to be coaching better, eventually they're going to fire you. Like, if you tell your bosses that, like, I know I haven't know. I got to be doing better. I got to do better. Eventually, they're gonna start believing what you're saying. Like, yeah, he really should be doing better.
I like the idea that, like, he got called into an owners meeting, so it's like him on one side of this comically large table with 360,000 people on the other side, and they all just like yell, "You're fired," and he's just like, "Oh, I didn't see that coming."
Or he just walks into Lambeau and like there's just nothing but just people sitting like in the audience and on the entirety of the field. It's just like chairs, just either lawn chairs or just like folding chairs, just all lined up in a row with a small little thing where you can walk into. So we'll be talking about that in just a little bit. But before we do, just want to thank you guys so much for listening, for supporting Norse Code. Again, really do appreciate that. If you would like to donate to the episode, you can go to paypal.me/NorseCode, or you can go to patreon.com/NorseCode as well. PayPal is obviously a one-time donation, or you can go to Patreon, which is more of a subscription-based. You can do any amount of money you'd like, $1 a month, tree fitty to help keep the Loch Ness Monster at bay. You know, whatever you feel comfortable with. If you hear value in what we're producing and sending out twice a week during the regular season, we would appreciate tree fitty, or just a couple of cents here and there. Again, anything you'd like to do is appreciated. If you would like to help us otherwise, you can share the links to the website, norsecodepodcast.com, or you can just send out links and just tell a friend about Norse Code. Again, really do appreciate it. And let's get into the episode and talk about the loss to the Patriots, which was a close game. It seemed like the game didn't really start to fall apart until the end of the third quarter, when a lot of the chickens came home to roost. Like, a lot of the play calling for the offense really like became glaringly obvious this was not a good choice of how they were doing it.
Yeah, it ended up, for the Patriots, it ended up paying off, because you're right, it was a close game for most of the game, like 7-10, that kind of stuff, until, like you said, the end of the third quarter, the offense has a 3-and-out, and then the fourth quarter, the Patriots score on the subsequent drive, and so it ends up turning a 17-10 Patriots lead into a 24-10 Patriots lead, and the offense could never get back into it. So I agree that it was mostly a close game, especially because the defense in the third quarter did a fairly extraordinary job of preventing the Patriots from scoring. And then, yeah, you're right, it just kind of fell apart. I think you're right that offensively there was not a ton the Vikings could do. They needed to do a lot more. Defensively, the Vikings made a couple of small mistakes against the Patriots. It's really all that needs to happen. And it's interesting because, if you take a look at some of the markers kind of defensively, I mean, they accomplished a lot of their goals. I mean, they limited Gronkowski, who's a player that's very difficult to limit. They made Tom Brady uncomfortable in the pocket. They did a lot of the things that you'd expect a defense to be able to do. We even saw a really good performance from Mackenzie Alexander, who, a lot of people have been, I think rightly disappointed with in terms of his performance with the Vikings over the past couple of years. But this is a really great game for him. And then, things fall apart, right? So, the Patriots ended up just threading together 2 consecutive drives that ended up in scores. And then, it's kind of all they needed.
Yeah, and it was especially during the first quarter, you saw that you saw Tom Brady kind of pick things apart. But after that, the defense really stepped up, and this was a much closer game than a lot of people would have expected.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's like another example where after the first 2 or 3 drives, the Vikings defense looks like it's lost, discombobulated, looks like it's not communicating, looks like it's not really on the same page, and it doesn't look like it has the ability to compete, and then they really clamp up for a long time. And that's fairly characteristic of the Vikings defense this year, where the first couple of drives, I think in the first 2 drives or something like that, they ranked like 22nd in the NFL defensively, and then from there on out, they ranked like 5th. And so it's unfortunate we didn't get to see them put together that whole game. One could say, and I don't know how much of a role this plays, but intuitively it seems like it played a role. We could say that the Vikings offense, the 3 and outs and not staying on the field long enough maybe played a role in that. There ended up being more possessions in the game than I think the Vikings would have wanted. They probably would have wanted the game with fewer possessions and one where they probably had the ball at the end to kind of close things out. But I think for the most part, the defense played really well. Sony Michel didn't get very much done on the ground. Obviously, James White ended up having a pretty good game, and they needed to find some way to kind of close him down, and they didn't really do that. But they clamped up on Edelman, they clamped up on Patterson, and they had a little bit of trouble with Josh Gordon. Some of that had to do with injury, of course. They basically rotated Rhodes in and out, and when Holton Hill was on Josh Gordon, that ended up playing out pretty poorly. But I think kind of considering the circumstances, the defense for the most part played pretty well until you got to some of those mistakes regarding James White, some of those mistakes regarding Josh Gordon.
Yeah, and anytime that you have, I think, like your top 3 corners out on the sidelines for a play, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever God you believe in. Like that's not an ideal situation for anybody.
Yeah, no, it's tough. The Vikings have invested so much in cornerback depth precisely because of that, right? That's why they have Holton Hill. Mike Hughes, of course, would have been nice to have, but he's on IR. Trey Waynes got hurt. He got sent to the locker room to check for, I think, a concussion. And then, of course, Xavier Rhodes, like we said, has been rotated in and out. And so when you do have somebody banged up, like, say, Holton Hill in that situation, you have to rely on Marcus Sherrills. There's a reason the Vikings activated Craig James, a guy that they had in camp who didn't perform all that well in camp, but is very familiar with the defense. And, they promoted him up from the practice squad very soon after signing him to the practice squad, in case, the next step essentially was taken and they had to lose, another cornerback. So, yeah, it ended up, getting pretty thin. And, the Patriots, obviously, they weren't. It's not like they had, the Steelers receivers out there, but, they had a little bit of talent at receiver and a lot of talent at quarterback. And so they were able to figure out kind of where the holes in the defense were going to be from a matchup perspective, even if those holes might not have been there schematically. It's I'm not going to say it's a lot to ask of a defense because we tend to ask these things of defenses. They get injured. They're 4th or 5th player at that position, and they're up against kind of an elite player in some respect at that position, and they just kind of have to perform. But it is kind of understandable how kind of it got away from them late in the game.
Well, we're going to talk a whole lot about the offense here in just a little bit, but I kind of want to focus more on the defense for just a moment because we're going to spend so much time on the offense. But the big thing that I noticed, again, after rewatching it here just a little bit ago, was the lack of pressure to Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the amount of time that the Patriots were willing to invest in the pocket, because I don't think the defensive linemen played poorly in the passing game. I thought that they won their blocks, and it kind of didn't matter. So Brady threw the ball 32 times in that game. and only one of them was 20 yards downfield. Only 4 of them were even 10 yards downfield. It was a really low depth of target game for Brady. And so you end up with, 19 passes between 0 and 9 yards, and 7 passes behind the line of scrimmage. And so that was a game plan that was designed to get away from the defensive line, designed in some ways to attack the linebackers in the secondary, and the secondary, like we mentioned, was injured. It made a lot of sense. I mean, the Patriots go into this week knowing that Xavier Rhodes suffered an injury. Maybe, it wasn't as bad as they had thought, but, it's clear that Rhodes was going to be limited, and the Vikings put him essentially what looks like on a pitch count. And they also knew that after, once Rhodes goes down, they can pick on whoever is taking his place. And so they got rid of the ball quickly and forced those defenders to tackle. And they didn't always do that. That said, when they did put him under pressure, they grabbed that interception. They were able to. It wasn't a ton of plays. They were able to grab, I think. They forced him to run, which that's not a sack. That ended up resulting in a first down. That was kind of weird, but. They did fine when they were able to put pressure on him, but the Patriots were just willing to play the short game and play quickly so that they didn't have to worry about it. I mean, the one deep pass that the Patriots had, it was a completion for 29 yards, but for the most part, they just decided they didn't want any of that smoke, and it worked out for them.
Well, let's move on to the offense. We can talk all day, because everyone seems to be doing so since Sunday afternoon, about the choices made by John DeFilippo and the Vikings offense. This was not a great showing. It really looked like the Vikings were just checking down on every play, and analysis of that would basically be confirmed. And it looked like the Vikings were being successful in the run game with Dalvin Cook until they stopped running him.
Yes, there's a lot here, I think, to unpack, especially because Mike Zimmer was fairly vocal about his thoughts, in some respects, right? He thought they should run the ball more. He made that very clear. He's made that clear for the past couple of weeks. And then he also said that, he has some thoughts on the offensive play calling that he's not going to share. So clearly there were thoughts to be had. But that said, I think a lot of our perception of the way this game was called is more born out of frustration than observation. So, for example, I, too, left with the impression that, maybe the Vikings kind of checked down a lot. But they didn't. They threw deep 6 times, right? They threw past the 20-yard marker from the line of scrimmage 6 times out of 44. That's not, a ton, but it's not a small amount either. They only had 5 passes in the intermediate range, so maybe that's kind of where it comes from. There were a bunch of slants, but Cousins was under pressure on 13 of 46 dropbacks. And I think that they, watching the game on all 22, I saw a bunch of plays that were dialed up that were in the intermediate range that, Cousins had to get rid of the ball quickly. And I think a really good example of that is the 4th and 11 slant to Treadwell, where, it was weird to me because watching that play live, I remember thinking, it's kind of unusual that Cousins threw there. But I saw a lot of commentary live on Twitter that, they can't believe that DeFilippo schemed up a play where Cousins threw to Treadwell. And that's not really the case. The slant is there as a pressure outlet. Plus, you also just want to put defenders in conflict. You can't just run every route past the sticks, because then there's no reason to put defenders in front of the sticks. And then you're essentially passing against 7 in that area of the field, and you really want to put defenders in conflict, put them in difficult situations where they have to either cover underneath or above. And so that's why you might want to run some of those underneath routes on 3rd and long, and that can often work out. But in this case, I think it was a response to pressure, because on the right side of the field, there were two longer developing routes that were running past the sticks that Cousins didn't have time to go to. So he goes to the slant to Treadwell. The read actually makes a lot of sense because the middle of the field was a little bit vacated. There was outside leverage from the cornerback. So he throws the slant to Treadwell on 4th and 11. And it just sucks. It's just that kind of thing that happens. So I actually don't have, watching that game again, I don't actually have that many problems with DiFilippo, which isn't to say there aren't a lot of problems. So this is what, everyone's talking about the offensive coordinator thing. So, of course, that's what the article, we talked at the beginning of the show. That's the article I submitted. It's 3,000 words about this question about whether or not John DiFilippo needs to go or what the problems are on the offense and what we should talk about. We talked a little bit about, this Dalvin Cook thing, right? Let's talk about that. So in the first half, the Vikings run over 9 yards an attempt. I think Dalvin Cook nearly hits 10 yards an attempt in the first half. And that's not a fluke. If you take out the 32-yard run, which considering out of all the long runs to take out, that one can't skew an average that much, and it turns out it didn't. They still ran 5.4 yards an attempt without the long run. So it was very clear that they were successful in the first half with running the ball, and especially with Dalvin Cook. But what's interesting is that so in the third quarter, before the Patriots scored to go up 17-10, they call 3 more running plays out of 10 plays, so or I think 11 or 12 plays. And so, it's not a very high running percentage. Maybe you want to run it a little bit more, but also on those plays, they were averaging more yards per pass than they were per run. Plus, on one of the running plays, there was an offensive holding call with Tom Compton. So, it's this 2-yard run that gets taken back. So it's a negative 8-yard play. And so maybe you could have run the ball more, but then it's weird. So after the game, Zimmer says that they thought that the Vikings panicked a little down 7 in the subsequent series. And that doesn't make sense to me because there were only 3 plays in the subsequent series, and one of them was a run. It was a Latavius Murray run 5 yards. But the first play is a pass, is a deep pass to Aldrick Robinson. And that actually I thought was a good play call. You take a look, and you've got 2 receivers open, Aldrick Robinson on the left, Stephon Diggs on the right. It's cover 1 man. And the safety is not close enough to either of those receivers. He ends up choosing to throw to Robinson, and because of either a miscommunication, maybe pass interference, it looked like there was some contact, or just an overthrow from Cousins, and something, right? So it's either Cousins, a bad call from a ref, or miscommunication or something. But the play call was right. 2 receivers are open downfield. You just have to hit one of them, and so that didn't happen. So the next one, 2nd and 10. Which is typically a passing down. They run the ball, they get 5 yards. That's pretty good with Latavius Murray. 3rd and 5, that's a situation where offensive coordinators have chosen to put the ball in the quarterback's hands 94% of the time. I think the actual run-pass balance is 89%, but there just happens to be a lot of quarterback runs or scrambles. And so, of the remaining 11%, 6 of those percentage points go to quarterback scrambles to run. So they put the ball in the quarterback's hands 94% of the time. They very rarely run it. And it makes sense. You convert more on 3rd and 5 passing than running by a couple of percentage points. So it's basically an equilibrium. So I wouldn't fault him for not running the ball on 3rd and 5, even though the Vikings were successful running the ball in that game. And then they get sacked. Trey Flowers sacked for 10 yards. They have to punt the ball. And then in the subsequent drive, it's the 4th quarter. They're down by 2 scores, and they don't run the ball that much. I think that makes sense. They get the ball back with about 10 minutes. They've got 2 scores, and they've essentially, it turns out they only ended up having 3 drives left. So I think it makes sense for them to pass the ball a little bit more. They do run the ball, I think, twice in that subsequent drive. I don't think there's a ton of evidence to say the Vikings were too afraid to run the ball or should have run the ball in any of those particular situations. And this kind of elides the overall conversation about whether or not it even makes sense to run the ball all that often. In this game, of course, the Vikings were in the first half were very successful running the ball. In the second half, they didn't run the ball that much. They averaged 2 yards a carry. I don't know if that number means much, but if that number doesn't mean much, the first half number probably doesn't mean much either. I looked at all of the games this year where a team averaged over 7 yards per carry, and then over 5 yards per carry once you get rid of their longest run. It turns out that's 24 games, including the Vikings. Then I took a look at their second half rushing numbers, and they ran for 4.2 yards an attempt, which is the NFL average in the second half. And then they ran for 3.37 yards per attempt once you got rid of the longest run in the second half, which is below the NFL average. And so I don't know that having running success in the first half, even after you account for the specific type of success the Vikings had, which includes consistent gains as well as long gains, necessarily translates into rushing the ball well in the second half. And the results are essentially the same if you only look at the third quarter, right? So you can get rid of, running to win or whatever in the fourth quarter. I get it, right? The Vikings look like they're running the ball well, and suddenly they don't run the ball. What are you doing? The Vikings, again, they only averaged 2 yards a carry running the ball, which isn't to say it was obvious they should have been passing, because they only averaged like 3.7 yards per attempt in the second half passing, with an interception too. They weren't doing well offensively. But I don't know that there's much evidence to say they would have continued that rushing efficiency. The Vikings were having their success running the ball in a particular way. They were running the ball to the outside a lot. And that was a good idea because Dalvin Cook in space is a very talented. It's a smart move. He's a talented running back that can break tackles. But it's also something that the Patriots very likely, and then it turns out subsequently kind of did, close down on in the limited opportunities the Vikings gave him. And I'm kind of reminded of something that Mike Zimmer said a couple weeks ago about running the ball, which was you have to be patient with it because you're going to get a couple of plays where you only get 1 yard, 2 yards, and then you're going to break a big one off for like 15, and then you're going to get a couple of plays for 1 or 2 yards, and you're going to break a big one off for 30, right? And you need to be patient because those big plays will come. And the flip side of that is that once you get those big plays, it's almost guaranteed that your next several plays are not likely to be all that big. And so the fact that you do well running the ball historically in the NFL, which I found this weird. When I was looking for this, I was actually kind of looking for evidence of the opposite. I was thinking that I was going to write an article saying that there are really significant problems with the way the Vikings called the game. And I was looking to see, hey, teams that run the ball well in the first half, unsurprisingly run the ball well in the second half. And that doesn't turn out to be the case all that often. And so in this case, maybe you could have run the ball a little bit more, but we're talking about 3 or 4 plays because we're not a lot of situations where it made sense for the Vikings to run the ball. And they even ran the ball in situations where people typically pass, like 2nd and 10. So, I think there's a lot to say about the offensive coordinating, but I don't think the things that need to be said about it are the things that are being said, if that makes sense. I definitely think that there's a problem between what's happening with the coaching level of the offense and what's happening with the talent level, right? Because it's a mismatch. The Vikings are more talented than like 24th in points per drive or something like that. They're more talented than that on offense, even after you account for kind of how abysmal that offensive line is. And so there's a problem there. But I don't think the problems are the ones that we've been identifying, things like running the ball, things like no huddle, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And I do think you should probably run no huddle a little bit more. I want to clarify again. I don't think that the Vikings are at a perfect equilibrium for the amount of no huddle that they run, but it's understandable that they don't run it that often because teams don't run it that often. And there's more in my article at The Athletic about that specifically. I agree that the Vikings should have play action more often. And in this game, I think that they didn't have play action as much as they needed to, especially, if you're the kind of, offensive coordinator that believes that running success helps generate play action success, which, again, there's not a ton of evidence for. But they should do play action more often anyway, I guess, especially in this situation. So I'm not saying there are no problems with the offensive coordinating. I just think that the problems we're identifying are not necessarily the right ones. And if that's the case, then it also changes kind of how fixable this is because I don't want to give away the entire article I wrote just now, but there are a lot of situations where I think you've had rough years from first-year offensive coordinators that have turned into really good years. I mean, one good example that I didn't go into very much detail in the article is Sean McVay, his first year in Washington. They ranked like 25th in points. And it was 2014. It was Robert Griffin's return year. So there's context there, right? But they had a really great offensive line. They had some really good weapons, and they ranked like 25th. So McVay is like an offensive wizard now. They run play action more than anyone else. They're aggressive on it on fourth down. They run a ton of misdirection. They've decided that the running back is more of a pass game feature anyway. They run 11 personnel a lot. It's very kind of like this is how you Madden. And it's great. But this happens a lot with offensive coordinators where if you take a look back kind of retroactively at some of the ones that were really good right now, they very often struggled early in their career, especially in their first year as a play caller. And there's a distinction, obviously, between your first year as an offensive coordinator and your first year as a play caller. Now, this isn't DeFilippo's first year. His first year was with the Browns, but it does kind of repeat itself when you only take a look at, the first year with an organization. I mean, the same thing happened to Ken Wisenhunt, where his first year with the Chargers wasn't all that great. And now the Chargers are like 9th in the NFL in points and stuff like that. So, and I think 6th in points per drive. I mean, they have the fewest number of drives in the NFL, so total points is not that useful for the Chargers. So, I mean, I have a lot of problems with the offense. A lot of it has to do with stuff that's outside of the control of DeFilippo, like the offensive line. But also, we need to talk about, like, hey, how much is Kirk Cousins responsible for some of these things? How much is DeFilippo responsible for some of these things? How likely are these things to be fixed? One of those things is miscommunication between the quarterback and the receiver. We saw a ton of that.
We saw a ton of that even in just this game. But it seems like there's been
like week 13.
Yeah, we've seen an instance of this nearly every week since the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I think maybe even twice a game. Like, I think that's been our floor for miscommunication, where the receiver and the quarterback are just not on the same page somehow. Twice a game. Like, I think it happens at least twice a game. I think there's very few instances where it's only happened once or 0 times. There are some games where it's happened more times, right? And so that's a problem, and that might have to do with Cousins. That might have to do with DeFilippo. I kind of doubt it has to do with the receivers because it keeps happening to different receivers. Diggs, I think, more often than other ones, but it's happened to Thielen, it's happened to Rudolph, it's happened to Robinson. Which that's kind of understandable. He's only been with the team for like a couple of weeks. But the fact that it keeps happening with different receivers tells me the problem is either with coaching, which facilitates that kind of communication, or with Cousins. And we've seen those problems with other offenses before, where offenses that blew up the subsequent year had miscommunications the previous year. I think Romo's best year with Des Bryant, the previous year was filled with miscommunication, and I think Jason Garrett was the play caller there. I think we saw that with Kyle Shanahan in 2015. There was tons of miscommunication between the offense and its constituent parts. In 2016, Matt Ryan wins the MVP. Kyle Shanahan gets hired by the 49ers. So that miscommunication seems to be a problem that's resolvable, although I would have expected it to be resolved by now. And again, I don't know how much of that is Cousins. I don't recall a ton of miscommunication between him and the receivers in Washington. So that kind of maybe points to it being DeFilippo. But at the same time, like, Cousins is kind of known for a lot of these mental errors that just kind of crop up. That's a thing that happened a lot in Washington. And so this would be kind of related to that. I don't know, man. It's clear that the offense needs to be fixed. They rank 24th in points per drive. They score as many points per drive as the defense gives up. And that, unless you're league average, that's bad. Like, the defense is like 7th or 8th, or 7th. I think it's 7th in points per drive allowed, maybe even 6th. And the offense is performing like a league average team against the Vikings defense, which sucks. So, there's a lot of problems. They showed up in this game offensively. But some of the problems that we talk about aren't, I think, the primary problems. Like, another one about throwing short of the sticks. The Vikings are like 8th in the NFL, or 9th in the NFL. That's it. 9th in the NFL on converting on 3rd and long. I don't think their play calling on 3rd and long is a problem if that's the case, especially because it's not often that they throw short of the sticks. If you only take a look at passes where they completed the pass on 3rd and long, the Vikings rank 7th in the NFL in converting. They convert like 70% of those situations, which obviously it's going to be high because you've only selected plays where they've completed a pass, but it's higher than the rest of the NFL in the same situation. So I don't think the play calling is a problem on 3rd and long. In this game, you saw 2 situations where they threw short on 3rd and long or 4th and long. One was that Treadwell play I already discussed. One was a dig screen. That actually makes a lot of sense too. I detailed that in the article. So yeah, I don't think the play calling is a problem. I think that there are other things that are related to coaching that are a problem. think there are other things that are probably related to the quarterback that are a problem. Obviously, having that offensive line is a problem. And coaching there, might be worth a discussion because with the death of Tony Sparano right before the season, it's very difficult to maybe get on the same page right away with two offensive coordinators. So, or two offensive line coaches. There's a lot of things at play, but I don't know that the things that we are having conversations about are the things that are the primary issue with the offense.
Well, we got a ton of questions about the JDF situation, and one of them was, does Zimmer know how to control an offense? It's not clear to me he has any knowledge necessary to do so, as he's a defensive coach.
That's interesting. Some of the more successful defensive coaches that we've had around the league, Bill Belichick is obviously, the best example and therefore the biggest outlier. So maybe let's not talk about, because he's also an offensive genius, but he started out as a defensive genius. But you could take a look at like Pete Carroll, right? He's a defensive coach, grew up in the Tampa 2 system with Monty Kiffin, the Vikings. And the offense that they've had there has been really good for a while. No one's really talked about it. A lot of that has to do with Russell Wilson. And despite the fact that I think no one liked the Brian Schottenheimer signing, the Seahawks are like 7th offensively in points per drive. So, they're doing something right, and you can have defensive head coaches with teams whose offenses are performing. I think offensive head coaches are kind of a wave right now. They're a little bit, I don't want to say a fad because a lot of them are working, right? But I think that very often you end up with teams with defensive head coaches like Ron Rivera with the Panthers, especially in the 2015 season, Cam Newton's MVP year, where the offense seemed to do all right. And so I'm not that like Gus Bradley Atlanta, right? Or Dan Quinn Atlanta, sorry. Dan Quinn, bald former defensive Seahawks coordinator. Same guy.
Same guy, basically.
But yeah, Dan Quinn with Atlanta. I mean, that offense is good. The defense isn't great. They've had a lot of injuries, but that offense has been good. Obviously, with Steve Sarkisian, that first year was rough. But hey, that's another great example of the first year of Steve Sarkisian. They went from first in points scored to like 15th, and now they're back up as one of the top 5 scoring units in the league. They had a defensive head coach, so I don't know that defensive head coach means offensive struggles. Whether or not what that relates to Zimmer, I think it's less about Zimmer's kind of inability to connect with the offense or his inability to contribute offensively, and more about his need to contribute defensively, as it were. I don't think it's that he put in a situation where he required to give a lot of offensive input and talk to the offensive coordinator about game planning, play design, play calling, coaching, etc., that he wouldn't be able to contribute in a very big and meaningful way. I suspect he would, actually. I think it's just more he doesn't want to give up his focus on the defense. And that's not just play calling. I mean, he's a very hands-on coach. He does a lot of technique hands-on coaching with the players during the weekend and training camp. He does a lot of game planning defensively. And then, of course, he's also a play caller, and he's also primarily in charge of adjustments defensively. So there's a lot going on there that he might want to necessarily offload to Edwards. He talked about that this week, where he was thinking about, again, maybe I should offload some of the adjustment work to Edwards. But whether or not Zimmer can contribute, I think is different than whether or not at least mentally contribute, provide his football intelligence offensively. I don't think that's a question. I think it's just more whether or not he can contribute from a focus perspective. And that's an interesting one to me because he's tinkered with this idea for a while. George Edwards called plays in the preseason for some of the games this year, but Mike Zimmer's kind of taken the lead again defensively. The thing is, this might be the best defensive adjustment unit in the NFL. They adjust better than any other defense in the league. So to say Mike Zimmer should give up on defensive adjustments, that's a difficult sell too. So I don't know. But I mean, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer.
Another question that came in, I believe this also was from Kenneth Allen, who said, if DiFilippo doesn't get a head coaching job, is there any chance that Zimmer cans him? I know this seems like a crazy hot take, but Zimmer has called him up publicly and is very invested in a run-first game.
I don't think it's that hot of a take, at least from the perspective of what I've been seeing. I mean, Sage Rosenfels, my coworker at The Athletic, tweeted out that the Vikings needed a new offensive coordinator now, which implies firing him. I saw a couple of blog posts about firing him. I know the Daily Norseman has an open letter to DiFilippo where they don't call for firing him, but everything short of, essentially.
They're not mad, they're just disappointed.
Right. Well, I mean, it's very Minnesotan, right? But I mean, I've seen other blog posts where they say they should fire him. So I don't think it's that hot of a take because I think Don from Ohio wants to fire DiFilippo. It's one that's like fairly commonly held. And I think Don's reasoning is actually really interesting because he's citing the Ravens firing whoever was it Cam Cameron, or they bring in Cam Cameron? But it was like right before the Super Bowl run. And the offense, had a spark. A good example this year might be Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator for the Cardinals. They got rid of Mike McCoy, I think maybe he was the offensive coordinator there. And they put Byron Leftwich in there, and the offense immediately improved. They're not like good, but the difference is like really stark. They're much better. And like they're using David Johnson and stuff. So I'm not saying that if you don't fire someone, you're not going to see improvements. I mean, despite the fact that the Vikings lost their subsequent games after Norv Turner resigned, I thought the offense improved when Pat Shurmur took over from Turner. So I'm not saying you shouldn't fire people. And there's some evidence that even doing it late in the year might yield improvements. But I am saying that for a first-year guy, I would hold back. That's distinct from the question that Kenneth asked, which is it likely that Zimmer will? And I think that there's a lot of reason to think that Zimmer will think about it, but I don't think he will because loyalty is very important. I mean, you hear him talk about it all the time. And I think he wants to give DiFilippo another year unless it's kind of a head coaching opportunity. So I think that in a world where DiFilippo does not get that head coaching opportunity, he's still the Vikings offensive coordinator. And I'm not that upset by it so long as, DiFilippo's like reflective and can learn from it, et cetera, et cetera.
When you had said Cam Cameron, I just sat there for a moment. I was like, is he talking about the actor? And I actually did have to Google it. I was like, oh, Kirk Cameron. Sorry. Cam Cameron was in fact the fired assistant for the Ravens. Kirk Cameron, however, not the same person.
Not the same person.
No,
weird. I know.
You start in Growing Pains and you do the Left Behind movies and you do some amazing infomercials in case you haven't seen those. But so the DiFilippo thing is kind of the starter. It's the big thing that everyone is talking about this week. As for the Vikings anyway, if they're not going over to Packers Twitter and saying how sorry they are that McCarthy is gone and that they really should reconsider to keep him on the field. So yeah, the DiFilippo thing is just so weird because you're sitting and watching some of these plays and just go, I don't understand what they're the turning point for me in the game, or like the nail in the coffin for the game, was the 3rd and long and 4th and long that they were unable to convert in the 4th quarter. Obviously, this is where the game ends, and watching the 2 dump offs, you just sat there and just went, I don't understand what exactly you were trying to do there, but it didn't work. And then going back to the well the second time really didn't look like it was going to work.
Yeah, it's just I think the thing is viewed, I think, in the context of how both of those plays developed. I think it makes a lot more sense than it looked like. I think when it comes to 3rd and long play calling, DiFilippo deserves the benefit of the doubt because the Vikings are one of the best offensive teams on 3rd and long. And then second, when you take a look at what was happening on those plays, it makes a lot of sense because there are routes that are going, well, not for the Diggs one, but for the Treadwell one, there are routes that are going past the sticks that Cousins just didn't have time to get to, and the coverage kind of dictated going to that slant to get rid of the ball under pressure. For the Diggs one, I mean, the issue there is that the Patriots were doing the amoeba look all game. And so I think Rex and Rob Ryan call it the psycho look. I know different defensive coordinators and coaches have different names for some of the same stuff. And psycho might mean one down lineman for one defensive coordinator, might mean two down linemen for another one or whatever. But the point is, you couldn't identify what the Patriots defense was doing because they kept moving all their defenders around. At first, it kind of looks like confusion, but it's very clear as the game progresses that this was definitively it was on purpose. And so they would have one down lineman, but they would have other linemen stand up, move around, kind of, float around. So it's difficult to identify the defense. That Diggs one is a response to kind of the late breaking version of what that defense ended up looking like, where I don't think DeFilippo called the play. I think Cousins audibled to a screen based off of the defense he was seeing, and it wasn't even that bad of an audible. There just ended up being one extra defender at the point of attack. And, maybe if Compton had decided to block up instead of out, that would have been a conversion. I don't think that call was actually on DeFilippo. So, I mean, that's part of it too, is that sometimes quarterbacks audible into things. I don't even think it was a bad audible. So I get it. Like, this is the end of the game. If you don't convert these, you lose the game. Both of these throws end up kind of behind the sticks by a pretty significant, not even by a small margin, by a significant margin. What are you doing? I think contextually it actually makes sense.
It just seemed more like a throwback to the Christian Ponder days than it did anything else.
And I think that's a lot of it. People are very used to Bill Musgrave, Christian Ponder. We're like, why would you ever throw past the sticks? It's not going to be complete anyway. Oh, crap. Why didn't you throw past the sticks? It's never converting. It's like one of those. Or even like early Pat Shurmur with Sam Bradford. It was like the least aggressive offense in the league, even on third down. They'd throw. Sam Bradford under Pat Shurmur, after Shurmur took over, the offense improved. But one of the issues, third and long, was that they would never throw past the sticks. And that, bore out in very poor third and long numbers that year. So I think a lot of it is the Vikings history and the Vikings fan base history with offensive coordinators that seem kind of fascinated with this idea of getting the third and long conversion after the catch. But DeFilippo was actually pretty good on third and long, or at least the Vikings are, and he's the offensive coordinator. So he deserves a little bit of the benefit of the doubt.
Well, we've talked a lot about the coordination. A lot about the coordinator. How about the individual players? How do you feel Kirk Cousins did despite the play calling?
I thought, this is tough, right? Because, two of those deep passes, probably defensive pass interference in the end zone. The Thielen one's a little bit harder to call. The Aldrick Robinson one's pretty clear. I don't know if those were necessarily accurate otherwise, but the interception late was kind of a backbreaker. In a clean pocket, he had a quarterback rating of like 66.7, so it's not as if it was a result entirely of pressure. I thought that he had poor pocket presence when pressure did arrive. But on most plays, he was all right. It's just, which is like such an Arif thing. Like, here are like my 8 problems with them. But at the end of the day, it's fine. But yeah, 4.6 yards per attempt. It's not as if like Bill Musgrave is calling those plays, man. Like, you need to, if you're throwing short, you need to complete passes, and if you're throwing long, you need to, have pretty decent ball placement. And there were those mistakes and miscommunications. There was an instance or two where he was hit as he was thrown, and you kind of want to give him, some credit for that. But I don't think he played all that well. Like, I thought, you could say he was hamstrung by the offensive coordinating, and, maybe that's fair. But one of the reasons you would go to the run instead of the pass is if running is more efficient. And in the first half, it was. There were bad balls to Diggs, or bad balls to Robinson, bad balls to Thielen. He wasn't helped by a drop or two here or there. But I didn't think Cousins played all that well, and I think that's kind of getting ignored in this discussion too. Is that Cousins probably should have played better.
Maybe. What about the play of Thielen and Diggs? This wasn't exactly a game where they were able to start the world on fire, but they were getting some looks, and as a result, it looked like Robinson was getting more open.
Yeah, no, I thought. I mean, it's always difficult because you can't always see when receivers are breaking open. Thielen maybe had his worst game since for the past couple of years, right? I think there was a pair of drops from Thielen, I want to say, which, I mean, I guess in fairness to Cousins, there was a pair of drops from Thielen. Like, what the hell?
Well, the one was borderline uncatchable, too. So it was like, are you really going to count?
You're right. You're right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Although Paul Allen was convinced that, or I forget if it was Paul Allen or his associate on the radio that said something along the lines of, as hard as it is to say, that's usually a ball Thielen gets. Like, yeah, it was also a 99%er.
Yeah, right. I think that's kind of what influenced me is that I'm used to Thielen making those catches, so I'm like, it's a drop. But like, you're right. It wasn't very good ball placement either, and so it forced Thielen into a difficult situation. He very often, turns those up. And if we're going to praise him for making those catches look good, we probably shouldn't criticize him for when that doesn't happen. So that's fair. But, you get the other Thielen drop. That's an issue. I mean, he got open, right? It's Adam Thielen. He got open. Stephon Diggs, I think he had an even better game. But... yeah, I mean, it's Diggs and Thielen. I mean, there's not a ton to criticize there. The couple of opportunities that Thielen had, maybe he didn't kind of turn those out. And I think it's been that kind of year for Thielen, which obviously he's playing as like one of the 4 best receivers in the NFL, at least from a production standpoint. So, he's making the plays that he should make, and that's a lot of plays. But it's interesting because he's not making as many plays that I think characterized the previous 2 years where he would do these extraordinary things. And of course he still has them, like the catch over Jair Alexander with Josh Jones closing in just a week before. But I think there's a lot of instances where we're used to Thielen making the play and he's not. And that's not a criticism of him because I think this is actually a good thing, right? Because if he's producing despite not making these insane spectacular plays, and he still has some, right? Week 2 against the Packers as well. Then that really means that there's a lot there as a receiver because sometimes he's not going to make spectacular plays and he's still going to get you 100 yards. And that's kind of what this game was without the 100 yards. He didn't make the spectacular plays that we're kind of used to seeing from him. Maybe we shouldn't criticize him for not making spectacular plays because that's a weird expectation to have of someone who has now kind of developed a lot of consistency as well. So, Thielen was, didn't have as great of a game as he typically does. Diggs had a really good game. Robinson, I think, there's not a ton of plays for him, so it's always difficult to tell. And a couple of opportunities that he has a target. One was a DPI, so we don't know how he would have done. Another one was maybe miscommunication, maybe another DPI, maybe an overthrow. So we don't know what would have happened there. But, Robinson, had that drive where he had 3 consecutive catches, including one for a first down. And so that was nice, and I like seeing him more involved in the offense because he is turning into a pretty valuable piece. And this game, I think, kind of demonstrates that. With Rudolph, I thought we saw maybe his best run-blocking game in a long time. We saw, a pretty decent, in terms of, I think we had, did he have 4 catches in this game? How many did he have? We saw a pretty decent showing in the passing game from him. But he had 3 catches in the game. Nothing too spectacular, 38 yards, but, I thought he did all right. And then obviously, Dalvin Cook, both through the air and on the ground, was great. I think he had 8 receptions for 22 yards. So he didn't have a ton of, opportunity because he was, hit behind the line a lot. I think it's another game where he had more yards after the catch than he had total receiving yards. But for the most part, he did pretty well. He got involved in the passing game, and obviously in the running game, he was pretty spectacular.
Well, the next thing we should probably talk about is the firing of Mike McCarthy.
Hey.
And if
such a tragedy.
It is
so classless.
What classless organization in this day and age within the last couple of years, fires a coach mid-season. That is trash.
Wow, I can't believe that. I mean, at least Norv Turner resigned.
Yep, Norv Turner resigned. I can't remember the last time the Vikings did this in the last 4 years. Not at all. There's not a single coach I can think of.
Yeah, not one.
No, not in the last 4 years.
Not coming up. Yep,
no,
not coming up.
He won them a Super Bowl. That is not how you treat someone who won you a Super Bowl. Where's the loyalty at? Unbelievable.
This also means that Mike Zimmer is the only head coach in the division that was like also the head coach. Well, last year? When did Matt Patricia start coaching the Lions?
This year.
Yeah, so Zimmer's the only coach to have also coached last year.
Good. Are you sure the Chicago coach didn't coach last year?
No, I had to actually look it up. No, Matt Nagy did coach in 2017, right?
Yeah. But if you won 3 years, because we're about consistency here, you can't do that to a coach who's been there that long. I'm just saying,
Matt Nagy did start coaching this year. He was the offense coordinator of the Chiefs in 2017.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, fine. Anyway, no, it's a darn shame that you do that for somebody. Although there's been a lot of talk about potential head coaches for the Packers, including John DeFilippo, which would make some people happy. But
remember also, Kyle Shanahan was a hot head coaching candidate in 2015 for the 49ers, and he didn't get the 49ers job. And everyone's like, why is Kyle Shanahan a hot head coaching candidate? The 2015 year with the Falcons is one of Matt Ryan's worst in a long time. And the 49ers may have wanted to accelerate that process. I mean, they ended up hiring him anyway 2 years later after they fired Chip Kelly. But, it's sometimes – okay, so here's the weird thing. So we got a couple of questions, essentially like, why is John DeFilippo a head coaching candidate, or why is he still a head coaching candidate after this year or whatever? And sometimes really good head coaches were whatever, offensive or defensive coordinators. And sometimes really good offensive and defensive coordinators, not very good head coaches. Honestly, there might just be zero relationship between how good of an offensive coordinator you are by any number of objective metrics and how successful you are as a head coach. So people want to catch the next best thing. They want to get their next Sean McVay. They want to catch their next Matt Nagy. A lot of people think that might be DeFilippo. And Matt Nagy didn't call plays last year for the Chiefs. That was Andy Reid. So, who knows? Maybe he'd be a good head coach. I don't know. There's a bunch of good head coaches that were whatever as offensive or defensive coordinators. Or, I mean, you could even look at John Harbaugh, special teams coach, right? I'm sure his special teams units were great, but okay.
That's where you're going to start. Yep.
Right.
Oh, God, special teams people. We do need to get some sort of a kicker specialist.
That's another conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
How good is Mike Prefer? Maybe not good at all. We've had this conversation a couple of times in the podcast, though.
We've almost talked it to death. I feel like we need to get some sort of a subject matter expert on here.
Yeah, we should probably do that. But for now, you have us.
For now, you have a Reef's kicking analysis, which is fantastic, by the way. And if you'd like to donate to the show, you can go to patreon.com/Norse Code. Patriots.
We're pointing out Daniel Carlson did kick a game winner for Oakland. Maybe Mike Prefer ruined Blair Walsh. Maybe he made Blair Walsh because Blair Walsh's final season at Georgia was not that great. In 2015, for Walsh was fantastic. So who knows? Punting has never been great, although Matt Weil has finally turned into a pretty decent punter who's going to have one every 3 games, or you're just like, what the heck was that? The coverage units are not great. A lot of.
I like how Matt Weil sounds like a car that's it runs. I mean, it'll die on the highway, but it runs.
No, he's okay. So if you take away the 1 out of every 3 games punt that he has, he's probably a top 7 punter or something like that. He's doing a really good job. But then he'll like shank one for 20 yards. So, whatever. But on balance, it's pretty good. But I mean, the Vikings have run through specialists, right? They've run through kickers. Maybe they shouldn't have gotten rid of Kai Forbath. I don't know. But, Blair Walsh and Kai Forbath and Daniel Carlson, and now Dan Bailey's having like his worst non-injury year ever. Because, I mean, his worst year was an injury year, which, I mean, okay, that makes sense. But then what?
Why does Matt Prefer keep that cursed like Egyptian amulet? Like, why does he even have that thing in his office? I feel like he should destroy it. That way the Vikings can have some form of success. Why do you even keep a cursed amulet anyway?
This is really insightful analysis from Norse Code. I will say, for a guy who seems to have developed a reputation based off the strength of his kick return units, so obviously Cordero Patterson, but also Percy Harvin, and then before the Vikings, Dante Hall with the Chiefs. The return game has not materialized since then. Maybe it's because Mike Hughes worked his way into the defense fairly early and couldn't be a kick returner, despite the fact that was one of the things they were considering for him. But they haven't been able to turn in a very good kick return game. And I don't even want to hold him up to the standard of like, well, they haven't been able to replicate Cordero Patterson's success, which like, no shit. I mean, he's the best kick returner maybe ever. Which every time I say that, people are like, what about Devin Hester? And he's like an average kick returner and a phenomenal punt returner, which I'm sure like people who've listened to the show for a long time are very tired of hearing me say that.
Well, Amir Abdullah is actually, I was actually thinking this while I was
he's actually doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, Abdullah has been doing a fairly decent job.
And in this game, he did a really good job.
Yes.
But yeah, there's something to be said about, I mean, like the punt coverage in this game wasn't great. Although Marcus Sherrill's, when he was punt returning, was pretty good. But yeah, it seems like there's not much justification to keep Mike Prefer on the roster, but also like, I don't know how much control special teams coaches necessarily have on some aspects of the game, and how much you can divine from like hiring a new special team. Like, what do you look for in a new special teams coach? Well, was he an assistant to a good special? That probably doesn't tell you anything. So yeah, I don't know, man. Kickers seem to get worse, punters seem to get worse, but in some respects they're fine this year. But like other things like coverage are not great. And this is this conversation about Prefer, but I'm just like not equipped to really contribute meaningfully to it.
That may be the only time you'll ever say, I may be in over my head, folks. I may not know what I'm talking about from this point forward, and that's why I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah, savor it.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, we basically covered our thoughts on Mike McCarthy. Damn shame. Couldn't have happened to a nicer fella. Darn shame.
Dang.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the mailbag, and we are actually starting off with another DiFilippo question who goes, assuming JDF has gone next season, whom would you like to replace him as offensive coordinator?
Well, if that's the assumption, Kevin Stefanski. I think that was kind of the soft agreement / promise, not even agreement because the Vikings didn't have to agree to anything, but the promise essentially that they made to Stefanski, and it's the reason they originally brought in Todd Downing. Now, obviously, Downing ended up fulfilling, I think, the tight ends coaching job, and Clancy Barone left tight ends coaching to coach offensive line after Tony Sperano's death. But they originally brought him in, I think, to be the quarterback coach in waiting. He's just the special offensive assistant before that. And then Stefanski be promoted from quarterback coach to offensive coordinator. He's been with the team for years. Pat Shurmur wanted him to be the offensive coordinator. And the Vikings denied that because they have the ability to do that because there's only 2 coaching levels from the perspective of the league rulebook governing these things, head coach and assistant coach. And so the Vikings can block any lateral moves, which means assistant coach to assistant coach, but they can't block any promotion moves or moves up, right? So you can't block an assistant coach from interviewing for a head coach job, which is silly. Like, obviously, offensive coordinator is a step up from quarterback coach or whatever, right, or position coach. But they blocked him, and I think part of that is because they valued him, and they were considering, I think, having him be the offensive coordinator. But then this opportunity with John DiFilippo opened up, and they didn't want to miss out on it, especially with kind of the season the Eagles had. And so they brought him in. But I think that it's Stefanski, and I would want to keep things in-house. Just it creates, I think, continuity for an offense that I think definitely needs it. And also, this guy's been around a lot of offensive football, and it's maybe time that he kind of deserves a shot. And one of the things about all these hotshot coordinators is they have to come from somewhere, and so maybe it's him.
All right, next question is going to be from Zen Cupid, who asks, Vikings Twitter keeps telling me that Weatherly is outplaying Everson and should be the one starting. This take seems over the top to me. Is it?
Yeah, I think it is. Weatherly is playing all right. Like, he's not playing I don't think he's even playing at a starter level, and maybe that's influenced by the fact that I'm very used to watching Vikings defensive linemen who have consistently just been good, especially the defensive ends, but have been consistently good for as long as I've watched the Vikings. I can't remember when they've just been bad across the board on the defensive line. So yeah, there's that, but I mean part of that has to do with Everson Griffin, right? So Griffin, since returning, has been on and off, but he's had good games since returning. Weatherly has just been all right, and he's peaked at having a couple of splash plays. Now, obviously, he's very valuable to have on the team. I think he can develop more. He's playing a lot faster, which means I think he's processing things a lot quicker because he was already an athlete. I'm very excited that Weatherly is on the team and he can be a valuable asset and that he can be a high-quality starting player, but he's not there yet, and I don't think Griffin is playing poorly enough for you to say that Weatherly should replace him. Even in this game, Weatherly played 19 snaps and he had 2 tackles. One of them was a stop. But yeah, Everson Griffin played 64 snaps. He had 4 stops, right? So I don't think Weatherly is outplaying Griffin, even if you include that first game back where Griffin was clearly just out of sorts and not playing well.
Next question is going to be from Justin Ekstrom, who says, why the minimal snaps for Ioka and Curse?
So they combined for 3 snaps, I guess. That is admittedly surprising. And one would have expected that they be kind of the people to take on Gronk. I guess they weren't needed, right? Gronk ended up with 26 yards on 4 targets. So the longest gain 15 yards. And with a pass deflection from Mackenzie Alexander too. Gronk, man. I guess they just had other plans or ways they wanted to organize the defense. It might be the case that this is such an obvious move that the Patriots have inbuilt responses to putting a big safety on the field, and it might just be blocking them to oblivion and running the ball. Although, again, that doesn't make a ton of sense because the alternative was Mackenzie Alexander, right? So, which I'm pretty sure Gronk can block. But yeah, I don't know. I have no idea, but it worked. So good.
So we'll take it. Kyle Slaby asks, given the circumstances, how has Holton Hill looked, and do you see him as a major contributor in the future once we are fully healthy?
Hill didn't have a very good game, and that's coming off of the heels of a very bad game against the Packers, which balances out how great he looked at the beginning of the season, or at least in his early snaps. I shouldn't say beginning of the season. I think he could be a meaningful or even starting quality contributor down the road. I think this game he didn't play all that well. I think there's a miscommunication that led to something. I don't think PFF logged him for that miscommunication. I think PFF only has him 1 target, 1 reception, 7 yards. But there were other mistakes that were made, and they targeted him. I think he missed a tackle as well. So, yeah, he didn't play all that well, but it's not nearly as bad as I think the week before. But that doesn't bother me from the viewpoint of his long-term prospects. I think that he's shown a lot of flashes of talent and just needs to show consistency, which, this seems to be a good coaching staff for that defensively. So, he didn't play all that well. That's fine.
Next question is from Josh Bjork, who asks, Did 55, or Barr, play, or was that just a ghost on film?
Well, I mean, yeah, he was fine in coverage. I mean, I don't know what people are expecting at this point from Barr. I mean, like 3 sacks a game or something. He played fine. Like, he had 6 tackles. None of them were particularly impressive tackles, like no stops or anything like that. So he didn't play like lights out or anything like that. But they didn't ask him to rush the passer all that much. I think he only rushed the passer on 5 or 6 snaps. Yeah, I mean, he was targeted 4 times in coverage for like 36 yards. So didn't give up any big plays, but did give up a couple of receptions. Yeah, I mean, sure, he needs to like assert himself in the game, but like it's not like he was the one covering James White on a lot of these plays. It's not like he was the one asked to cover Rob Gronkowski all that much. I mean, he allowed like 1 catch to Gronk for 7 yards, 1 catch to James White for 8 yards. Cool. Like, I think he made 1 mistake, and that was like at the James Devlin catch. So yeah, I mean, he didn't like he didn't play this game as if he were the guy to make $12.5 million next year, which is what he's slated for. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's worth $8.5 million. So this is not a game where I'd point to and say, no, he actually secretly he played well, and you just don't know it. This is not that kind of game. But I mean, he didn't play all that poorly either. He just he didn't assert himself like you'd expect maybe a $9-10 million linebacker to.
Next question is from Luke Braun, who asks, is it completely wild to just bench Mackenzie Alexander for Jaron Curse? It seems that Alexander gets lost way too often, and that would outweigh any athletic advantages he has.
It's just the one play to Cordero, right? That's it. He had a good game, man. That's not fair. That said, I mean, Curse has been playing better this year, so maybe. The Vikings clearly don't say it that way because even in the game where you expected Curse to play, they played him 2 snaps. So I guess not, but this game is not the game where I think that conversation makes sense. But I don't think it's a bad idea necessarily because Curse has been doing really, really well in the nickels. So, I mean, sure, do it, but I don't think that this game is the reason why.
Next question goes to Logan, who says, could kicker problems lie with the holder?
Maybe. Having the holder show up late, that's funny. But I mean, like,
such a Vikings thing to do.
Right. It's like, well, it's kind of like the Nafahu Tahi of 2018. Maybe it's not the 12th man or anything like that, but like, what are you doing, dude? Know your role.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've. If you mean that the issues that they've had so many different holders over the years. Maybe because they've had a ton of different punters, but I don't think that that's been the case here, especially because the broadcast always likes to focus on the snap and the hold on a missed kick, and I don't think there have been any glaring circumstances. And I think there's even been one circumstance where Wild did a phenomenal job controlling an errant snap and getting the ball in the right place at the right time, with of course the laces out. So I don't think the kicker problems are holder related, although cycling through so many holders, maybe. I don't know. I just feel like, and we just had a conversation where we're like, I don't know if Prefer's that good, but like, I feel like if that were the problem, we would have not cycled through so many kickers and just tried to address the holder problem first.
Entirely possible. RJ Anderson asks, what positives is Kirk bringing to the offense that a replacement player wouldn't?
I mean, like, he's got accuracy, aggression. He's got great pre-snap diagnosis. That's really difficult. A replacement player, and very often they don't have very much arm strength either. So, and he's got pretty decent arm strength. So, a lot of things. I understand the frustration with Kirk. I wrote an article last week kind of bashing him, but he's an above average quarterback that has specific flaws that hold the offense back. I don't think most replacement level players have his combination of arm strength and accuracy, because a lot of replacement level players either have good accuracy and poor arm strength, like Kellen Moore, or very good arm strength and poor accuracy, like Josh Allen. He's a starter. Maybe that wasn't fair. But
No, we watched Josh Allen. That's
my thoughts on Allen are clear.
Yes.
But yeah, he's got a good combination of arm strength and accuracy. He's got great pre-snap diagnosis. He doesn't have a good sense of the context of the situation, which is super difficult to develop. So I don't know that there's a lot of replacement players that are superior to that. Although Case Keenum had that, and the guy they just brought in for a workout, CFL quarterback Bo Levi Mitchell, 3-time CFL, was it? I get the CFL's version of the Pro Bowl, which they call All-Stars, but then also this year's All-Pro, which they also call All-Star, I think. So 2-time most outstanding CFL player, 3-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro. He's got a great context for situation. He knows when it's second and long.
Sometimes that's all you want in a quarterback.
Right, yeah. He's actually pretty Keenum-esque from what I've seen. 6'2", kind of a scrambler, quick release. Played out of some spread offenses in college. He's from Washington, SMU. Plays a very Sandlot style. Threw for 8 million yards in college and then subsequently in the CFL, which I guess Keenum didn't do that in the CFL, but you'd suspect that he would if he could. So, yeah, maybe Bo Levi Mitchell should come in during the 2-minute drill.
It's about, why not at this point? Because Adam West asks, what reasons for optimism are there to suggest this Vikings nucleus didn't peak in 2017?
Dude.
This is the season of optimistic Arif, isn't it?
It's supposed to be. I think it's optimistic Arif and a 6-5-1 team or whatever.
Wow. Optimistic Arif didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Okay, so I would say that the offensive line is better. Not that means a ton. I would say that the quarterback is better. Not that that's materializing. I would say that the receivers are playing as if they've got a year better, which they did. It's super talented, and a bunch of offensive coordinators, after having difficult starts, have turned things around. So those are probably signs for optimism. The defense is probably the best at adjusting in the NFL. They are a phenomenal second-half defense, top 5 second-half defense in the NFL. And they do a phenomenal job of generating pressure up front. They've only had one bad loss against a good team. The other losses they've had against the good teams, which I guess include the Bears, that's still difficult to say. But also the Rams and the Saints, were all games where the Vikings were very close, or in the case of the Saints game, probably outplayed them were it not for 2 or 3 splash plays. So they can compete with good teams. Maybe they can't finish or whatever, but the evidence suggests that your close game record does not follow you even in the same season. So a lot of the turnarounds are built off of that. Plus, the Vikings currently have the 3rd worst fumble luck in the NFL. We all know that tends to regress. From the 2016 season, it regressed negatively. This season, it should regress positively for the final couple of games. So they should be luckier when fumbling, which they've been very unlucky with. And they should be luckier in recovering opponent fumbles, which they've also been obviously unlucky in recovering. So, those are signs for positive regression or luck and optimism. They've played well against good teams except this time. They've only had one bad game against a bad team, and although that was a really friggin' bad game. So, yeah, they've had a couple of double-digit victories over some run-of-the-mill teams. So, yeah, it's there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful, I guess. They've got a 60% chance of making the playoffs.
That was a hell of a pregnant pause there.
I was looking for the right word. It wasn't I don't believe this. What am I going to say? They've got a 60% chance of making the playoffs. I think a lot of people are acting like they're out already. They're hanging on to this 10% chance of making it thread.
Thanks to Washington sucking it up and Washington quarterback legs just becoming incredibly easy to break.
A fungible commodity, it turns out.
Yeah, whoever keeps telling the quarterbacks for the Redskins to break a leg before they go out there, stop it.
This is so weird because every year, again and again, I bring up, the evidence suggests that the Washington football field does not result in more injuries. And every year we're just like, oh, another quarterback got injured in Washington, huh? Weird.
Yeah, it's so odd. Why, there has to be something that the stats are missing.
Well, I guess running backs, offensive linemen, wide receivers, defensive backs, they don't get injured that often. Obviously, Adrian Peterson did, but I think that was more because of a dirty play by Dejon Gomez than the field. But, it's just quarterbacks, man. Also, it's not like the Alex Smith one was because of the field.
Well, no. Let us be perfectly clear on that one. Ouch. HVAC Repairman asks, would you rather have no tongue or no thumbs?
Jesus, man. I mean, I like to talk, so I guess no thumbs. Obviously typing is very important to me, but I feel like I can work around that a little bit more, despite the fact that I couldn't, press the space bar.
I'm trying to envision you doing a 3,000-word article, just, hunting and pecking.
I'd figured out. The bigger issue is holding stuff. I think that would bother me more.
When I read the question, my first thought was, I'm envisioning me, stirring food on a pot with, a wooden spoon and just, having to, trap it between my fingers. And, wow, this is ridiculously annoying.
It sucks. I mean, I like tasting food and I like talking. Obviously, the no thumbs makes it difficult to eat food too. But at least once it gets to my mouth, I can enjoy it. That's a great clip to take out of context. But yeah, it's got to be I got to get rid of the thumbs, man. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I gotta get thumbs go in this situation. Final question is from Beer and Trembling, and this is related to the game that's about to happen on next Sunday, which is going to be against the Seahawks. Beer and Trembling asks, name your favorite Blair Walsh missed field goal.
I'll name 3. All 3 that he missed in the Seattle loss to Washington in a game that they lost by 3 points.
Yeah.
Wait, the Seahawks guy is going to come in asking that question. We got to talk about all the Seahawks misses that Blair Walsh has had. He missed 3 against Washington for Seattle, man. Suck it up.
I think that has to be my favorite because, even the announcers felt bad for him at the end of it. He went out there for that third one, knowing what had just happened previously. And he just walked up, was all ready to go, launched it, wasn't anywhere near close to it, and just turned around, just sad Charlie Brown face.
They didn't even get rid of him until the Week 17 missed field goal against Arizona with 30 seconds left.
Yeah, it's you're done here. Just you should go. How you got back on the plane from I do not understand. That's the sort of thing where you're taking a Greyhound back. No, sir, we say no to that. That is, and we are going to include in the show notes a wonderful compilation that I discovered on YouTube of every single Blair Walsh miss. It could bring a tear to a glass eye. It was so perfect, and it's 6 minutes of just Blair Walsh misses. I had blocked most of these out, but yeah, this is something that will be available for all of you to watch in the show notes. Reef, let's plug something.
Yeah, I got my piece up at The Athletic, or as of this recording, I've submitted it. By the time you listen to it, it might already be up. Piece up at The Athletic about the John DeFilippo question. I go into detail and talk about some of the statistics, as well as talk about previous examples of offensive coordinators and stuff like that who have struggled early on. So that's what I'm going to plug. There's also a great piece by Ted Wynn at The Athletic that asks the question, was Mike McCarthy the problem? He's a great film room guy. So I encourage people to check that out too.
All right, that is going to be it for this episode. So for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening, and please remember to tweet that, even if it is a work in progress. And we will see you later this week when we preview the Seahawks game. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and co-host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at Norse Code DN. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can make your one-time donation at paypal.me/NorseCode, or a recurring monthly contribution can be made by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. Any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can also be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.